So it's with great pleasure that I introduced Ray Bordon and Wayne Carr. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for coming down here and being with us. Why don't you, Wayne, if you will, tell the viewers what remote viewing is?
Remote viewing is a distant cousin of other psychic disciplines like clairvoyance or astral projection. And it involves sensing objects or events or people at a distance or also distant in time. It can be in the present, the past, or the future. So a better word for it is actually remote sensing or extended sensing. It's very much sensory based, and it takes longer than most other psychic disciplines in that it can take 45 minutes, an hour. So it takes a while to do it. It's not instantaneous, although instantaneous things can happen while you're doing a remote viewing session.
How far back in history does something like this go? I know that I probably didn't have the name remote viewing, but can it be traced back in our history?
It certainly can. Certainly shaman and other ancient traditions used similar disciplines. So this is basically an ancient ability. It's an innate ability that we all have. It's just that the recent protocols developed at Stanford Research Institute, and which have been improved on and changed by several different people and organizations, have made it more accurate. So.
How did you get involved, Ray?
In a roundabout way. Back in the early 70s, I was involved in some ESP experiments at a university in the Midwest, and I was invited by one of the professors to pair up with this young man that had just returned from Vietnam. And he and I became very good sender-recipient pair, and we worked together for about a couple of years or so. And I didn't see him after 1973 or late 73.
You worked clinically?
No, we were working together as pairs in one or, well, actually a series of experiments, ESP experiments, telepathy. And so that's how I met the young man that introduced me to remote viewing. In 1978, late 78, he appeared at my apartment in Ames, Iowa, and that's how we started. He asked me what I knew about remote viewing, and I just simply said, well, what's in the literature? And he asked me if I wanted to know more about it. I said, sure.
What year was this?
1978.
So remote viewing has been around, kind of a code word since 1978?
Yes. It had appeared in the literature, in the scientific literature, as early as 1973, 74. So there have been experiments as early as the early 70s.
You know, Peggy, the first time I heard about this remote viewing was before Ed Dames really came out with it. And I was reading a book, Out There, by Howard Blum, and they were talking about remote viewing, and I think that's the words that they used, having to do with inside, I think, the Pentagon, downstairs into a think tank type of a thing, where they were looking for submarines. And they had a group of individuals remote viewing where these submarines were and what type they were around the world. And then I guess in the book he said that there was like a dummy one that hadn't even been built yet. And it amazed me that the majority of the people, according to the book, came and said that, you know, they picked out the dummy one and almost pinpointed where the other ones were. So there's no more secrets to you guys.
In a sense, that's true. A remote viewer can remote view anything in time and space. There usually is no way of blocking remote viewing, and in a sense, there's no privacy.
Well, in a sense, we live in a public domain privacy anyways, because most anyone can know most anything about most anyone.
That's true.
But
everybody with computers.
Literally.
But covertly, that's not true. covertly, espionage, secrets that governments keep, if you had a group of really trained remote viewers, could...
Well, actually, it all depends on how we define reality. Okay, I mean, a government is essentially a construction, a human construction. It's something that we all agree exists, and therefore there are things that are to be kept secret. And those are also fairly arbitrary things that, well, arbitrary in the sense that they are valued, but they're not really secrets, because people have fields around them, and these fields act both non-locally, meaning that because my field and your, because you and I are here, we are interacting in line of sight, so to speak, doesn't mean that you and I could not interact when I'm in Dallas and you're here.
How? Through telepathy? Through
Well,
the telephone?
no, actually through your field and mine. In other words, we have come across each other, we have met.
Right.
Okay. That means that you would recognize my energy or my energetic field, which I call it an energy field around me.
An aura.
You have
Aura.
okay.
But
an
people
aura.
are familiar with the word aura.
All right, with the aura around you, which is essentially what we use to do precisely what we're talking about.
Okay, so if I was chief of staff and I was planning on doing something that I didn't want another government to know about, and I was part of the other government wanting to know what you were going to do, couldn't I remote view something and know ahead of
Theoretically,
time?
yes.
Okay.
It's entirely possible. Now, if you're talking about defending against that, then that would be something else.
So there are ways that you can not be remote viewed if you so chose, if you thought maybe somebody was trying to get into your own head or space or something, you could block that?
Again, theoretically, because, well, if you're going to, when you're remote viewing from Tucson, Arizona to, say, Chicago, Illinois, where there is some sort of a secret meeting going on, that can be accessed. But if the projection, if the field projection from here to there is made by an individual whose, well, essentially, field is known to those that have that can create another field there that would not allow this individual here in Tucson to be there, quote unquote, then that would be a form of invalidating the effort to remote view that situation.
So do you need
Does that make any sense to you?
Do you need a receiver? Do you need to come in contact with an individual to be able to remote view or to come in contact with that, whatever you're remote viewing?
It helps,
It helps. It's not necessary.
but it's not necessary.
Like you can remote view Benjamin Franklin or George Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can remote view people in the past and in the future.
How do you use as safeguards to know what you're reviewing or what you're viewing isn't a bunch of nonsense?
Well, I really think there needs to be a lot more research to get that
Okay.
clarified. There is a fair body of research to help make some distinctions, but in lieu of the fact that a lot of different remote viewing organizations are making different kinds of claims that are contradictory, it shows that people are not getting the same kind of data from their remote viewing. So there's some other phenomenon going on. They're either downloading from different thought forms or different collective unconsciousnesses, or they're just picking up garbage and noise.
Wayne, you have, now you are the Executive Director of the American Association of Remote Viewers.
Correct.
And also the Executive Director of the Western Institute of Remote Viewing. What do you do with remote viewing now? I mean, you have an institute now, you teach people how to remote view. Other than spying on each other or checking on your neighbor, what do people want you to do with this?
Okay, this goes way beyond just parlor games and spying on people. I think this is a marvelous, marvelous new frontier, and Some of the things that we've done is actually try to remote view possible cures for a disease and also actually try to locate defective genes, the names of defective genes. And I was very pleased when you came up as a remote viewer with a couple of names on a list of defective genes. So these may turn out to actually be the defective genes. There's a researcher in Philadelphia that's going to be working on this. So medicine, diagnosis, also in the field of psychology. I'm working on something called psychological remote viewing for assessment and diagnosis, and perhaps even in the field of couples and relationships, to have couples actually remote view each other to develop better empathy. The potential and possibilities are so much unexplored and waiting to be explored here.
How does the academic world, the academic people treat remote viewing?
Well, it's definitely mixed.
I mean, if you're going to go to a geneticist and say, I have this one and this gene that are defective, and she's going to say, how did you come across this? Oh, I remote viewed it. And they go, or do they accept
This particular doctor was very, very open to it, and he's definitely focusing more on those particular genes, so I felt we got lucky there. I went to the head of the psychology department of University of Nevada, Reno, and I had my little stack of drawings and illustrations, and he wouldn't even bother to look at them. He said it wasn't worth his while because it really basically was debunked. So.
It was debunked. The Army spent millions and millions of dollars on it, and they said they're no longer doing it, but yet if it worked, why would they quit? Unless they had something
that's
better.
one of the problems with academicians, that they keep with their own field, their own little narrow field of study, and they're not aware of what's going on in the government and what's going on in other areas. So this person was not even aware of what was going on in remote viewing and what its history was. Basically, he just closed his mind to it without even wanting to learn anymore.
And Ray, you're the former executive director of the American Association of Remote Viewers, and I know you are also the executive director of a group with the acronym CARMA. Could you?
Good Karma.
Good Karma, only Good Karma.
Yes, it stands for Centers for Alternative Remote Medicine Applications, which is a form of remote sensing, which is actually remote viewing.
And what does your group? What does it do?
We work with medical doctors and other physicians all over the country doing diagnoses and profiling conditions, and essentially helping people develop their own critical paths, and healing paths.
Now, isn't there a tremendous responsibility? I know when we did some medical remote viewing during one of your classes, I had this overwhelming feeling of responsibility that, I could be saying something that was totally wrong. And how do you deal with the responsibility that comes? It's one thing to target the sinking of the Titanic or, but it's another thing when you're dealing with somebody's physical health. And how do you deal with that responsibility?
Okay, actually the onus and responsibility lies in the hands of the person who has manifested an illness and is seeking healing. So healing is not a function of a caregiver, but rather the person that has manifested this condition. So as a therapeutic remote care giver or assistant, what we do is we work with individuals who have come to realize they are actually responsible for what's going on. And in that sense, our first level of function is feedback. We conduct scans, and we then feed that information back to the individual, as well as to the attending physician or the other caregiver. And then we proceed to the next level, which is profiling the condition, looking at lifestyle issues, at not just lifestyle, but also socioeconomic factors, home life, relationship, that sort of thing.
But can't you do that without remote viewing? I mean, isn't that being done now? How does remote viewing fit into that?
It is. One of the things that there are several doctors that I work with, and one of the things that doctors find about their patients is that they don't always tell the whole truth, at the beginning at least, and sometimes they'll not necessarily withhold, but be selective about the information that's given out. Even though there's a condition, there's a sickness, there's an illness, and there may also be things about their present condition that they may not be aware of, and even a perfunctory scan can reveal a lot of things.
So can you say, for instance, you had somebody come in with cancer, or is it even ethical? Can you remote view, like you said, ahead in time as well as going back in time? Can you remote view to see if they will survive it?
That is not an issue for me to decide. Rather, it is I will do what the patient or what the client asks for. I'm not going to do any more than what that person desires.
So that person asks you to do that. Can a person do that?
Sure.
Can a person remote view technically the win, place, and show of the Kentucky Derby?
I suppose that's possible. Yes. Would I be interested in doing that? Probably not.
No. Where I'm going with this is that when anytime a new technology or a new way, the paradigm seems to shift, so does the power. And individuals that have the ability or given the ability, I assume that remote viewing is easier for some than others. Some take, it's like anything else. We can all run, but we all can't be Olympic runners.
True. Yeah.
So with this ability, the power structures, you could use it for what you're using it for, or turn around and use it for something else. Can you not?
It is being used for
yes.
ethical and unethical things. Sure. Businesses are probably using it now for unethical purposes.
Sure.
Also, it's possible to download technology from the future before it's even invented, and so you run into an ethical question. If you take somebody's invention before they invent it, they don't get a chance to invent it.
So then time is the only thing we really have is now? Because wouldn't that change the future?
Yes. Just if you remote view the future, you can change the future. You can change the timeline.
One person can change the timeline.
Well, not the timeline for all humanity. It may be just a small change.
Well, we've been
Go ahead.
We've been hearing a lot. One of the regulars is Ed Dames on the Art Bell Show, and I must say he's predicting some pretty gloomy things coming up. I don't know whether these things are going to actually happen or not. How do you address, either one of you, how would you address some of the really dire Earth changes that he's predicting? Are these inevitable? Is he just making things up?
All right, John.
Well, I think Ray and I are in agreement that this stuff is not written in stone, and there's a lot of methodological mistakes in terms of how this is done. If you really want to be sure and accurate, then you really have to approach this in a very controlled, scientific way. If 10 remote viewers just come up with the same future, it doesn't mean a lot without strict controls and a strict procedure. Again, so some people get some futures, some people get other futures, and there's a lot of contradictions. And we don't know where the information is really coming from or where it's being downloaded from.
Can it be fed to you guys?
I think so.
Can you get fed disinformation purposely?
Yeah. But remember, you can fool all the people some of the time, but not
All the people all the time.
all the people all the time. So having said that, also remember that whatever claim is made, ask the normal questions. How did you do this? How was this done? How was this arrived at? On the basis of what information are these conclusions being given? And if the answers that come back don't stand up, well, then take that with a large grain of salt, which essentially is what Dr. Carr is saying. At the same time, how you do what protocols, what experimental protocols are used for this kind of research is also very much in question.
Now, remote viewing is done with nothing attached to your fingers, no wires around your head, no wires around your body. You're not in a tank of salt water laying on your back, floating at room temperature. This is done how?
Well, you can do it that way.
On your head, though.
You have to wear a pyramid on your head.
Right.
Just kidding, just kidding.
Yeah, where did I put it?
And I'm here, I'm defenseless because I didn't bring mine.
Oh, well, gee, Ted.
Well, there's all different kinds of variations on remote viewing. It can be done enhanced by technology. But usually, yes, it's done just with the mind alone.
All right, now
It's an innate ability we all have.
we've talked about it, but we haven't said how it's done. Now, Peggy, I know a little bit about it because of Peggy. She comes over and says, write a number, write something on this envelope and write a number on it and give it to me and don't tell me what it is. How does the number mean anything? I mean, you can go into a calculator and hit 18 digits or 8 digits and put a number on it, and how does that zone into whatever was inside the envelope?
Okay, I'll give you my answer, and I think Ray has a really good answer to this one, too. Part of it is intentionality, just by the fact that you had the intention that this number is associated with this target. But the number itself is just like a coat hanger. It's just an ID number. It's just a way to identify the target. And I think this even transcends intentionality, because you can put a target into several targets into a bunch of envelopes, shuffle the envelopes, and then put random numbers on the outside and still remote view the target. So
you can actually have, instead of a person doing it, you could have a computer
the
put the
computer
numbers
could
on.
select the target, and you
Yes.
will still get it, yeah.
And your answer?
Very similar. Again, it goes back to intentionality. If you say that Tucson is a target that you offer to the class tomorrow, and that not only just Tucson, but specifically this building, and you put the number 3214-8821, 3214-8821, and you, Ted, say 3214-8821 stands for, and it is my intent to offer that as target to this class tomorrow for you guys to remote view this building, or this number. And the number, this set of numbers then represent the target. Where did you put that number? And where did you send this building, or rather the idea of this building? Well, in remote viewing theory, it's called the matrix. So where do we do remote viewing? On Earth. So the Earth field, in a sense, becomes our matrix. So it's somewhere in there. So you, Ted, design, or by design, chose this building as a target for tomorrow, assigned these numbers, a coordinate that then people can use for targeting this building without knowing that it is this building.
So that way, this thought is now in the, let's say, ether somewhere.
The Ethernet.
In the Ethernet. Yeah, okay, the Ethernet. And so once, when I get an envelope, which I don't, of course, know the contents, and I look at that number, then part of me knows that I'm connecting with that intended thought. And so I know on some level, I know what the target is, but I have to get that information from that part of my consciousness out here into 3D, out here into this
Right.
reality.
Okay.
You need to externalize that.
And,
Yeah.
Externalize.
and the part of you that you get it from is your autonomic nervous system. And Ray has an excellent model for this. Basically, it's you're surrounded by your field, which is your mind field, and your autonomic nervous system is basically a tuner that gets information from that, and basically your central nervous system has to have a dialogue with the lower part of your brain, or lower part of your nervous system, to be able to speak the same language. And that's basically what remote viewing is. It's a dialogue between here, and learning to speak the same language so that you can decode and decipher the information that this part of you is telling you.
Okay, but somebody wrote that on a piece of paper. Can you have a computer pick the program?
Sure.
So then
Yeah.
it isn't so much an individual putting like a fingerprint or an idea in an envelope. It's like the intention wherever it may be or wherever it may come from, and you're just putting an ID number, some ID control number on the outside, which means nothing to anybody other than it kind of fingerprints what's inside the idea itself.
There's some kind of association, and again, it can be done by a computer, so it doesn't have to be that kind of intentionality. I think just some kind of physical association.
Okay, you touched on this before, protocols. What are some of the protocols that you have set up? Not
Okay.
protocols, protocols, but also boundaries. Do you have certain places you won't do, responsibilities to whomever, that if somebody comes to you and says, I need to know the combination of this safe,
Right.
or you know,
Yeah, there's definitely an
because
ethics
I
of remote
forgot
viewing.
it at my
Sure.
house.
Right. Well, yeah. There's an ethics of remote viewing, and you really have to understand and get sense the motivation of the person that wants a target done.
So did you guys, or did a group of remote viewers come together and set the ethics down?
There is no universal standard of ethics, and of course some remote viewers are more ethical than others, but the general rule that I use is view unto others as you would have others view unto you.
Somebody else said that and wrote it down a long time ago, I
Yep.
think.
It's a very good rule to go by.
Well, now I've had a couple of people say to me, well, you know, I'm not psychic and I don't really know if I'm going to be able to do this. If I take this class, am I going to be able to remote view because, you know, I'm not a psychic and so forth? How would you respond to that? Maybe starting with Wayne.
Well, Ed Dame says he is as psychic as a rock, and he's had some pretty good sessions. So you don't have to have a traditional sense of psychic ability. It's a psychic ability, but it's again, a remote viewing session takes about 45 minutes to an hour and a half. There are many sessions too that you can do, and that's one thing that you're doing, and really a pioneer in that area. So.
And this is something you can do at your house.
Right.
This is something you can do with all of your relatives over, and they don't have a clue of what you're doing.
Well, the more distractions you have, the less target contact you have.
It doesn't work too well.
It's actually, I'll probably, sure, why not? I'll take a jump at this. It has nothing to do with being psychic.
I think so. I think everybody has
It has nothing to do with being psychic. In fact, it's more as we were talking about this on the way over here. It's the ability to connect the central nervous system with the autonomic nervous system, and be able to connect one's autonomic nervous system to one's field. And we get things with our fields. We don't really have to go anywhere to obtain information.
Can a deja vu be a part of remote viewing?
I can't remember of having a deja vu experience doing remote viewing, but
No. Can it be
no.
People that don't know, deja vu would be, like you've done something before. Could you, in a sense, have remote viewed that in some other time in the future, and you're just doing it again?
Let's back up a little bit, because we're using remote viewing as as a name for a whole host of phenomena. Deja vu may or may not have, for all we know, may or may not have anything to do at all with remote viewing. But one of the things that we need to understand is that the way we do, or the way we produce the result called remote viewing, is by using extended sensing. Now, having said that, what is remote viewing?
Right.
Well, remote viewing is actually a set of protocols that bind this internal process that gets externalized over a period of 45 minutes to an hour and a half for one target. And that set of protocols is what becomes remote viewing.
Remote viewing.
Yeah.
You just can't. Without taking the class, I can't sit down, write a number. I don't know if I can or can't, but
You could.
could I?
Yes, you
Without
could.
taking the class,
Yes, you
write a
could.
number and do it.
Yes, you could.
In a sense, maybe, because
It-
everybody.
Theoretically, yes, that is very possible.
The only thing that we need to do is plug in, right?
Correct. It's the method you use to harvest the information, if you will.
Okay.
That's the role of the protocol.
I do a little mini session with groups of people all the time who have no training or experience, but we go through a little 15-minute procedure, and it might be a mountain or a lake or something. And a certain number of people in the audience will get it right off the bat. So it doesn't, to get initial primitive target contact does not take extensive training. What takes extensive training and to real refinement is really getting deep target contact, really getting specifics.
And discipline.
Yeah, I've found
Yeah.
that some of the targets have a tremendous emotional quality. These seem to be
Some do.
easier because there is a certain amount of emotion, whether it's like, for instance, remote viewing, the dropping of the bomb at Hiroshima. That has so much emotional impact that almost everybody picks up on that. I think where the refinement comes in are things that don't have that much of an emotional quality, or they're not as powerful. They're still important, but they're more subtle.
Like you were telling me, you were given a target, an ashtray to remote
Yes, an
view.
ashtray. And that was
Something
certainly
very mundane,
subtle.
not
Yes.
high.
The more details, the more depth there is to the information framework that you're remote viewing, the more you're going to get.
When I was talking about deja vu, I really wasn't meaning, in a sense, that remote viewing is that, but it's part of the psyche of each one of us and the viewers out there that have come in contact with something they really don't understand any more than, say, I was going to say that, the form of telepathy that we have it, but we just haven't, and we get glimpses of it, but a lot of times we just shun it off without really trying to key into the true ability that we have that is unseen. When
We're
you say-
trained to shut it off, yeah.
We're trained to shut it off, right.
Yes. Or dismiss it.
Yeah, I think that's more the case.
I think that some people too have, there are different kinds of remote viewing sessions. I mean, sometimes people have a total out-of-body experience where they actually feel and see the whole scene in front of them.
Wow.
And it is, a really 3D kind of thing. But more typically, it is, in fact, a remote sensing where you start getting information from the ether or from this or whatever that field is that you just mentioned.
Autonomic nervous system, ANS.
Yes, okay, autonomic nervous system, and it's more subtle, and there's also you have to trust what you're getting, which we're not trained to do. We're trained to think logically and linearly, and we're not really trained to trust our insights as
And
well.
that's what remote viewing is excellent. It teaches you to trust yourself, to trust the different parts of yourself, and to tune into that.
What applications could this, other than what you're doing, could you see in the future somebody working the remote viewer, sergeant remote viewer of the police department?
There are all kinds of applications in the works, even at present. There are police departments that we have worked with and continue to work with, helping them set up their own operational remote viewing units. That for one. There are also private detectives that have gone through remote viewing training who are using remote viewing skills in identifying or actually tracking whatever it is their cases may be in service to clients.
Like if Susie and Tommy came to you and said, I lost my son or my dog, or
Correct.
then you possibly would set up, unbeknownst, a group of your remote viewers without letting them know what the target was.
Correct.
And setting that down and watching that, and then take, they all might say, a green car with the license plate starting with E, and a bunch of other numbers. So you take all that information and put it together and find out what most of them said to come
what
up
the
with a
common
picture.
threads are. Yeah.
That would be the role for the analyst, yes. But before we got to that point, we would go through a series of intermediate steps. The assignation of targets would be made by the person that wants to have information. He or she would then have a series of questions. Those would then be given to someone completely outside the group that would assign 8 numbers. That person would give only the 8 numbers to a third person, who would then distribute these numbers to remote viewers. Those remote viewers would give their answers, essentially their reports, to an entirely different person who would collect them.
So there's no pollution.
Yeah, the bottom line is, the more blind people are to the target, there's less chance of contamination.
Right. And to
distortion.
avoid contamination, we'll go to extremes.
I found that Nick was giving me, Nick Honey, was giving me targets.
Where's Nick, honey?
He's home. We babysat for 3 days for 3 little kids, and he's recovering. I bounced back, but he's recovering. But he was giving me targets and assigning the numbers, putting them in the envelopes. And I found that I could just get those targets so easily. And I realized that there was probably some contamination there, just because I think I was reading his mind on some level. So that's when I went to other people, and then I just had them, and then I had somebody else assign the number, because I found that even the person writing the number, there was
It's a good precaution.
yeah.
Yes.
So then
Very
somebody
good
else
precaution.
would assign the number, and then I find the more blind it is, because then your mind just it's so easy for your mind to jump in and feed you what we call a storyline.
Yeah.
And the less you know about what this target is, the more clueless the mind feels, and so it kind of shuts up for a little while, and lets the real
Yeah,
goods
if
come
it has,
through.
once it has something to grab onto,
Oh man,
then it just takes off
I'll
with
say,
it.
oh, this looks like Ted's handwriting. I'll bet he's asking, and it's like,
Oh, I see.
Suspension of
saying?
disbelief.
Yes. So if you have no idea what's in that envelope, then you're more apt to be just really neutral, and that's when you get better data.
Does something like this drain you?
Yes. Yes.
Well, Ray and I probably don't have exactly the same view on this. I think
yeah.
it's definitely energy intensive. It doesn't have to be draining. I believe that if you really take care of yourself, your breathing, listen to yourself, and pace yourself, it's energy intensive, but it doesn't have to be exhausting and draining. That's an ideal. Occasionally, you will be exhausted and drained. It depends on the nature of the target. If it was, if it's a tragedy, you could really feel terribly drained afterwards.
We've got 15 minutes. Why don't we, if anybody, because this is shown all over the country,
Let me get
If-
this.
books, and if they need to find a
all kinds of
book,
things here. Yeah.
and email or an address or somewhere where somebody could get in contact with you in case they wanted to do this, or you will go, you will one of you or both of you might, if somebody in North Carolina
Have
wants to
local
put
travel.
Good.
I'm not sure where I'm going.
If somebody wants to organize or set up a workshop,
Right.
then either one of us are interested in going.
Okay, and why don't you give a phone number and address
Okay.
they can contact?
Well, maybe
Well-
because I'm holding up Ray's book here, Remote Viewing, Towards a Conceptual Framework of Understanding. So maybe, Ray, you could just talk about what you do and how people can get in touch with you.
Well, people can get in touch with me through an 800 number. It's 1-800-455-0910.
Say it one more time.
1-800-455-0910.
Do you have an email?
Yes, it's BEN0127 at airmail.net.
One more time.
BEN0127 at airmail.net.
So if somebody is interested in the therapeutic end of remote viewing, this would be something that you might be able to help them. I know you have
Therapeutic remote care, yes.
therapeutic remote care. This is really focusing in on the health
Correct.
part, health and healing part. Because I know a lot of people are very interested in that. And Wayne, we have, you have a whole home study course here. You have the written material and all these tapes. Would you like to tell us about that?
Well, I'm very happy and proud about this product because it's an easy way to learn. It's an excellent way to get started because everything is set up for you to learn step by step. And these are what's called guided remote viewing sessions. So the audio cassettes actually guide you through the session. And the written part of it, the literature, basically has a format that you follow. It's basically filling in the blanks, and you just follow it down and follow the instructions on the tape. And there's several different kinds of sessions. There's mini sessions, there's an informal session, there's formal sessions, and it gradually leads you to higher and higher levels of contact to where you just have what's called a session with no explanation. It just brings you right to the bare bones of the remote viewing session. So
if anybody wanted to contact you about any of these things, they can contact you through or how?
Okay, through the Western Institute of Remote Viewing. And that's 800 number is 888-540-6085.
Do they ask for you personally?
It's not necessary to ask
There's
for
a
me.
prompt on there then. There's a person on the other side?
Yes. It's 888-540-6085. And I also do workshops in Reno, and I do workshops in Las Vegas and San Francisco, or any place where somebody wants to set up their own workshop. If you want a workshop organizing kit, there's one on my website, which is remoteviewers.com, remoteviewers.com. And
Well, speaking of workshops, that's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 days. If anybody in the viewing audience is interested, we probably can fill a few more spots, but we're filling up fast. If you are interested in finding out about this workshop, be at the Stellar Cellar, 3335 East Grant Road, tomorrow by no later than 9:45, because we will be starting at 10 o'clock. This is going to be an intensive 2-day workshop.
How long is it going to be?
Well, the tomorrow could be fairly long.
Yeah, and we'll probably end up going through about 6, maybe 7
Hours?
o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the Sunday will also be a full day. It's going to be, this workshop's going to be facilitated by both Ray and Wayne, and I think this it may not ever happen here in Tucson again. This is really quite a workshop. It's going to be dynamite. So come on down.
Wayne, did you have a number they can contact? Can they ask for the workshop? You guys coming through your 800
yeah,
number?
I can check my
Or through
voicemail.
the email and stuff
You
like
could
that?
call me at the 888 number.
Okay.
Also, my email address is remoteviewers@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And Now, tomorrow, can people expect to do some remote viewing,
Yes.
within the next 2 days? That
Yes.
will happen.
They'll get their feet wet, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We have about
I
ni-
remember that feeling. It was like, oh my gosh, this works.
we have about
It can
9
be like
minutes.
nothing you've ever experienced.
Yeah, that's what Peggy's been
I've been ranting and raving about that.
raving about it. I read a book. I'm not going to mention the book about remote viewing when I could see. And inside the book, it talked about some really bizarre things. I mean, they were really way out. A certain individual flying here that really was hard for me to even say, gee, give me a break. Can other remote viewers remote view what that person said at that specific time in the future or the place to verify whether or not that actually happened?
And in terms of listening in on what people said, that's one of Ray's, his particular protocol is very good at zooming in on the actual audio content of a
Let me understand.
target.
Let me understand this. Someone,
Remote viewed a religious figure coming back to this planet in the future.
okay. And you wanted to know,
Well, it was, yeah, I would want, it sounded pretty ridiculous to me in reading it. It read pretty ridiculous, I might say, to me. Is there any way of verifying what another individual remote viewer viewed? Because it sounds like anybody could make that statement, make a statement saying they remote viewed something and write a book. I mean, I could probably go out and write a book on remote viewing and make all of these statements. Benjamin Franklin had 14 kids, if I did a little bit of research.
correct.
So is there any way of proofreading or proof seeing or proof remote viewing somebody else's work?
Yeah, I suppose there is. It would probably, yes. Yeah.
So you can go back to that same time and period that other
Yeah.
individual had.
And you can actually pick up the other remote viewers at the targets that have already remote viewer. Once you remote view a target, you're part of the target.
Actually, we can remote view the intentionality of that individual.
Okay, how about this? How about, say, another race that is coming to this planet or has been to this planet or is remote viewing this planet at this time? Can you pick them up remote viewing you?
Sure.
One of my best viewers
Yes.
was remote viewing a target in the future, and evidently there was a remote viewer at the target, and that remote viewer recognized Damien, who was remote, so they saw each other.
It is possible.
Whoa.
Now, but see, there's a problem with that in that, I think you said it very well. Can it be verified? Simply because Damien and I, or Damien and him, came up with essentially the same information set, doesn't necessarily mean that the information is valid.
Oh,
So that can be taken with a grain of salt.
that can be a screen thing or something?
Could be, yeah. Remember, there are issues of both validity and reliability, and in both internal and external issues of validity and reliability. Because in this case, for example, in the case that you're presenting, the person that is saying, "Can you view this person viewing this historical figure or this religious figure?" Maybe he just made it up, and so we may come up with something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So we remote view the intention of that individual
I see.
as a way of getting at what really happened, because actually the report is an externalization of whatever happened inside of him.
I want to just take a slightly different turn before the show's over because
I need 2 minutes at the end.
okay, because we touched on Ed Dames, and he's been saying some pretty interesting things that are coming up with dealing with Earth changes. And Ray, have you done or worked with any remote viewers who may have come up with the same or different scenarios for our future?
In a manner of speaking, yes. There is a group in the association that is has undertaken this very issue, these questions about what is going to happen, and they call themselves Project Headlights. And I thought it was very apropos.
Yeah, like a deer.
Yeah,
Like
yes.
we're the deer in the
Like, yes.
headlights.
So their information set is that there are some things happening, but nothing to the extent that Ed Dames is prognosticating.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I'm glad to hear that.
I think
Really?
I look at remote viewing from a point of view that a lot of BS can be downloaded, and I can give Bugs Bunny as a target, and people will get Bugs Bunny, but it doesn't mean Bugs Bunny exists in the ordinary sense. So I think as you learn to remote view, you learn to develop a taste for real, actual data. That remote reviewing is actually a discrimination training also.
Very much so, yes.
Well, we've talked about that. We also have a conference coming up.
Yes, we do.
There's a load of conferences for those of you that are interested in different types of UFO, eclectic groups of people meeting together. For those of you that need that information, you can call me at area code 520-323-2371, and I'll give you that. The one that I do have the information on is Bob Brown's conference, coming up August 1st through the 8th, 8 days in Laughlin, Nevada. There are going to be a wide range of individual scholars throughout the world that are going to be there. If you get a chance, find out about it. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but it's going to be quite an event. Don't worry about the heat. You're always inside, and bring lots of nickels. That's all I have.
I know.
Yeah.
I forgot all my paperwork, so I don't have anything except for our remote viewing workshop tomorrow.
Can anybody that doesn't want to take the remote viewing class tomorrow, do you have any books with you? Could they pick up any books and get them autographed, or are they in the bookstores?
Not here, no.
Okay.
No, the only one that we have here is this one.
But can they order from the bookstore?
Sure.
Okay.
So you all got all that editing done, and you're ready to go public with your cause videotape?
I haven't really looked through it all the way.
You haven't actually seen it.
I've seen it. I've seen every edit and every cut. It has probably 300 edits in it.
Wow.
That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
It was a lot of fun to
That's
do,
a lot of
though.
work.
A lot of
I'm sure it
work,
was
a lot of fun, and I want to thank all the people that were involved in it. And you will be seeing it. It will be coming out.